How do you avoid a situation where it's like 5 years passed and I'm still not a single bit closer to my goals? How do you avoid forgetting and not taking actions on your goals? Well, there are a few steps. Let's start with the first and most obvious one. It is to remind yourself of your goals every single day. And there is many ways that you can do this. For instance, you can put a piece of paper on the wall. You can let someone call you and then ask you. This is called accountability partner. Or the way that I do it, I write in my diary. At the end of each day, I write down how much progress I made and also how much progress I should have made. And that has two advantages. The first is that it brings the future to the present, because it makes me realize that there's no such thing as working on your goals tomorrow, because working on your future and working on your goals always happens in the present, not in the future. So it makes me realize that the future is now. And also, it allows me to see how consistent I am and how consistent and how much progress I should be making. So in other words, I do more and I do things more consistently by writing it down every day and by comparing to how much I should be doing. So I have both daily goals, monthly goals, and yearly goals. And this is, I would say, optimal, because daily goals, sometimes you don't reach them, sometimes you do. Monthly goals are good because they average out across the days. And so if you have a day where you don't do something, then you can just do more on the other days. And yearly goals, of course, are when you zoom out how you should be, because when you have too many daily and monthly goals, then you may forget the big picture. So this is what the yearly goals are for. And so basically, you have to remind yourself of your goals every single day, because otherwise the future is going to feel far away. But actually, the future is now. Working on the future happens in the present moment and not next month. The second method to stop forgetting your goals and to avoid a situation where it's like 5 years passed and I'm still not a single bit closer to my goals is to forget a bunch of concepts. So for instance, I used to be more or less scared of overworking. I used to be scared of overtraining. I used to be scared of running out of ideas because I have already implemented everything. For instance, let's start with the last example that I mentioned. I would sometimes not record a video because I would tell myself, if I record that video right now, I don't know what I'm gonna record next week. If I say it sounds really strange and bizarre, like, why not record the video that you want to record right now? And I can also tell you from experience, if I don't, then usually by the time next week comes around, I lose the inspiration to record that video. So it is completely irrational, but from your emotional perspective, where you don't think much, including myself, by the way, this is why I share this mistake, because I made it myself. It sounds kind of logical. Like, surely if you have recorded already 10 videos this week, then you probably gotta save some for the next week. It sounds logical, but it's everything but. Because, logically speaking, if you feel inspired right now, use it. Use what you have. You don't know how the future is going to be. Maybe your throat hurts next week because you cough or something like that. Or if you are on a trip, then of course you cannot really record. So you don't know what the future is going to be. And you are inspired right now. So this concept of, well, I'm going to save some work for the future doesn't make sense. right? And the same with overworking. To overwork yourself, you actually have to work so much for so long that it is basically impossible. Like, of course, if you have a very stressful job and work on it for months and months on end, then of course it is possible to overwork yourself. But if you don't have much pressure, it is basically impossible to do so. Because not only do you have to spend all your time working, you also have to have a lot of pressure on top of that. Because usually when you work a lot, then after a few hours of working, your focus just gets less and you work slower automatically. But to really overwork yourself, you have to really push in order to keep the same pace of output. And you have to do that for months and months on end. So it is extremely difficult actually to overwork yourself. And also overtraining is also incredibly difficult because to overtrain, you have to do like 2 to 3 workouts a day. And the difference between working out 3 or 5 times or even 6 times a week just is not enough to overtrain, I meant to say. Overtraining is actually so hard because not only do your muscles get weak after a while, and so you have to lower the weights, and also you have to spend so much time and energy that it is basically impossible to overtrain. And so it is basically impossible to overwork. It is basically impossible to overtrain. And it is basically impossible to run out of work. And thus it doesn't really make sense to say, well, I've worked enough this week. I should probably work next week more because what we've discussed with the not recording a video because you want to have ideas next week. This is what we've discussed. All these things are not realistic. They are mostly purely emotional. They are not real. And so, how do you overcome these inhibitions? How do you lose the fear of overtraining, of overworking, or of running out of work? Well, the thing that has worked for me is to become more restful. So, in other words, if you sit in silence, you lose the fear of overworking or of running out of ideas or of overtraining because you understand that if you do, then you handle these problems then and there. So when you work a lot, you probably get infected, so to speak, by the noise of this world. So you get very chaotic, very dysregulated, very split, and everything is just very restless. But if you sit in silence, then you get to understand that even if you do run out of ideas for the next week, you could just chill, or you can come up with new ideas. And so, in order to reach your goals, if we zoom out a little bit, you actually have to become more restful, because if you are more restful, you lose a lot of these fears, like the fear of overtraining, the fear of overworking, or the fear of running out of ideas. Because when you are more restful, you realize that when it is time to work, you work. When it is time to work out, you work out. When it is time to be creative, you are creative. You cannot force it, you cannot rush it, you just do. And when there is a time where you are not inspired, not creative, then you just rest until you have new ideas, new homework, new goals. Until you have those things, you just rest. But you see, this resting part is really scary if you are used to being chaotic and dysregulated, right? And this is why to actually reach your goals, you have to become more regulated and more peaceful. The third step to not missing your goals and to actually reach them and to actually do the work and to avoid a situation where it's like 5 years passed and I'm still not a single bit closer to my goals, which by the way really sucks, is to understand that diminishing returns are not really real. You probably know of Pareto's rule, like the 80-20 law, which says that 20% of the effort produces 80% of the results. And therefore, you can just do significantly less and basically still have the exact same outputs. Now, the thing is, I've noticed if your goal is to make a lot of progress, you actually have to forget the 80-20 rule. Like, of course, you shouldn't do useless things. Like, for me, it doesn't make any sense to create thumbnails because someone else can get paid for it, and the quality of the thoughts that I produce and of the experiences that I have and then share with you does not change if I create the thumbnails. So of course that can be eliminated using the 80-20 rule. But where the 80-20 rule is a problem is when you try to apply it to skills. So for instance, instead of running 10 kilometers, you tell yourself, I should run 2 kilometers because according to the 80-20 rule, I get 80% of the results by just running 2 kilometers instead of 10. Or instead of recording a video every single day, it is enough if I record once a week because according to Pareto's rule, I should get about 80% of the results. The thing is, just like with the fear of overworking or the fear of running out of ideas, the Pareto's rule in this context is not real. It's an illusion. It's emotions that manifest themselves as thoughts that sound smart, but they have no substance. Because imagine two scenarios. Like, let's say you want to become world class as an athlete. You could tell yourself, well, you know, the 80-20 rule says I've done enough, so I will just do nothing for the rest of the day. Or, you know, I really care about being fit, so I should probably train. And this has, by the way, nothing to do with overtraining and not training enough. This has to do with, do you work on the thing you care about or not? Or do you tell yourself, well, yeah, I've done enough, so I should stop doing? The problem with diminishing returns is that a lot of the times you convince yourself that because you reach the point where you have diminishing returns, that it then means that you no longer grind at that thing. But if you think about it, that doesn't make sense because now you've gotten good. Why should you now quit? And also, you like working on this thing. So why should you work on that thing less? That also doesn't make sense. And also, you will probably know this if you have done sports. The difference between truly exceptional and kinda decent is very, very small. I was in a running competition once, and the running competition is like 40 minutes long, so about 8 kilometers in the mountains. The first place is approximately 30 seconds faster than the 20th place out of 400 participants. And so as you can see, it's not that hard to be 30 seconds faster, on paper at least, but when you actually run it, then 30 seconds faster on a 40-minute running thing is an insane difference. That decides whether you finish first place or whether you finish as an insignificant person. And imagine telling yourself, well, you know, diminishing returns, it doesn't really matter whether you finish first place or 20th place because No. If you care about running, you should run, even if you reach the point of diminishing returns. Because it is at the point where you reach diminishing returns where the difference between being good, being average, being mediocre, and being exceptional lies. And if you already like working on that thing, it doesn't make sense to constrain yourself and to believe in diminishing returns. It makes utmost sense to just do the thing that you like doing, even if, or especially if, the returns are diminishing. And so, in order to avoid a situation where you have like 3 or 5 years and you still are not a single step closer to your goals, you, number one, compare yourself to your goals every day. Number two, you forget about overworking, overtraining, running out of ideas. You forget about all these things and just work when it is time to work, rest when it is time to rest. And essentially, what I would recommend you is to become more restful, because probably, I assume, you are already working enough. Because if you are restful, you get to accept that, sometimes you don't have ideas for that week. Sometimes you have a lot of ideas for that week. And so you just implement the ideas that you have. You don't force it. You don't kind of try to do work when there clearly isn't any work. When you've ticked off every single thing from your to-do list, you just rest, right? So you become more restful. And then also, number three, you forget about diminishing returns. Because why should you quit working on the thing that you like working on when working on the thing after you've become good determines whether you stay just good or become world class, right? And so this is how you avoid missing your goals. And so my name's Krill. My goal is to inspire 10,000 good decisions. And if this video helped you, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.